One power, invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power, indescribable, and you speak of it with every word you say. Mysterious until you know the truth. As simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, angels' wings or heaven's door. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? It's the power of the love in you and me. One power, one power.
Good morning. Welcome to CSL Midtown, coming to you this morning from Atlanta, Georgia. I just wanted to say that song that we always hear every Sunday morning, One Power, written by Daniel Nahmad, performed by him, beautiful piece, always moving. That he lives in Orange County, California, and I saw recently that he was sharing that he and his family are safe and that their home was not affected by, at least at this point, they were without power at the time. But I just wanted to share that because he is a beloved musician and friend of our center, I know. But anyway, we want to welcome you this morning. I'm so glad that you've joined us. We welcome everyone, no matter who you are, where you are in your life. We're so glad if you're listening online, either live now or on a recording that'll be posted later. Our center does reflect a beautiful, diverse reality that is everywhere present. So we welcome you, whoever you are and however you found us and whatever reason you're here today. Know that you are an individual expression of the divine life and that we are all connected at the heart level. You're welcome to participate here today, and I hope that you'll consider becoming a part of this community. We hope that those of you who are watching our broadcast on a social media platform will consider sharing it with your friends. For a better understanding of who we are and what we teach, let's listen now to our Declaration of Principles as written by our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes.
A few of the Declaration of Principles we live by.
I believe in one God, one absolute power, and first cause to all things.
I believe that this power is perfect love, and it creates out of a desire to express love.
I believe all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience.
I believe in the unity of all life, and the immortality of the individual soul forever unfolding.
I believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of God to all.
And so it is.
So grateful. Hey. All right. Well, my name is Judy Ailey, and I'm the moderator for today's service. And today we are continuing with our monthly theme of stretching into possibility. This week's topic was It Flows. We are always in the present possibility of being in the flow of every good thing. This power, this presence, this life, this oneness, this goodness is all that there really is, and it is always around us, expressing through us. We are immersed in it. What we need to do is pay attention to it and to consciously place ourselves in its ever-present flow. We are always surrounded by the infinite possibility of good. This goodness must come through us and express as us as it flows out into the world. So if you are wanting to experience something in your life that you've never experienced before, something new, you are in the right place. This flow of goodness is always available to us. We bring to life our own mental atmosphere, what we think about in our conscious minds and even in our unconscious minds becomes the experience in our lives. Think of this flow as your friend. Pay attention how you talk to yourself. What kind of mental atmosphere are you creating? Do you have things going on in your life that you don't like? Look inside yourself at your own thoughts. Some can even be unconscious thoughts and beliefs. And get in the flow of good. Let go of the other stuff that you've been dragging around. That is not the truth of who you are. Our opportunities are unlimited. Life lies open to you and to me. All the good that you can imagine can be yours. Get into the flow of good. Today, we have a special guest practitioner, Becky Fox. Becky Fox is an artist, a graphic designer, facilitator, and teacher, and a licensed practitioner emeritus with the Centers for Spiritual Living. She's also the wife of our speaker today, Reverend Dr. Ron Fox. And this morning, she will lead us in a spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. Thanks for being here, Becky. We're so glad to have you back. Welcome.
Thank you, Judy. It's an honor to be here and to be opening up today's session with a prayer treatment. And so I just invite everyone to turn within to that sacred space of the Most High and drop into our hearts and feeling this gratitude for life itself. And so I am recognizing this infinite supply of good, this infinite energy of love that is always here, flowing through us, for us, and as us. It's this divine power that is all-knowing, all-powerful, and everywhere present. And I'm knowing my oneness in it, and I'm knowing this for each person who is here this morning. And so in this realization of oneness, I just remind all of us as we take in this breath, breathing in and out in this flow of ease, it reminds us, it brings us this awareness that spirit, that this divine power is breathing itself so easily and freely. As we take in its breath and release it, we are reminded that we are a part of this life, this powerful life. And so in this realization, I'm knowing that this morning is one that is filled with joy, with abundance, with peace. I'm knowing that all of these gifts are always here within us. All we have to do is just open our awareness to all of these wonderful gifts. And just know that as we speak this word, claiming these gifts, that what happens is that each of us is manifesting these wonderful manifestations into our life. And so I'm knowing that this morning that this divine energy of love is flowing easily and effortlessly through Dr. Ron's message this morning. That as it's guiding Reverend Ron in his message, that each one of us is touched. Each one of us brings a deeper awareness to the message, to the words, to the meaning, to the concept of what he's about to share with us. And so knowing this, knowing that as we open and allow ourselves to hear these words, we are already blessed with our gifts. And so I just say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you, life itself. I release it, knowing that it comes back to each one of us filled in love and in light. And so it is.
So it is.
All right, moving on. Reverend Dr. Ron Fox has been a motivational speaker and workshop facilitator for over 25 years. He's also, of course, an ordained minister with Centers for Spiritual Living. He was awarded the Doctor of Divinity in 2018 by Centers for Spiritual Living and awarded also the Meritorious Minister Award for his outstanding service. He resides in Port St. John, Florida, with his wife, Becky, who we just heard from. But thank you for joining us again today, Reverend Dr. Ron Fox. We look so forward to hearing your message today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad. I love coming back here. So I know I'm going to enjoy it, and I hope you all do too. So the title, you see it up there, is How to See Yourself as You Really Are. And I want to begin with two quotes from Dr. Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living. So the first one, he said, "No limit can be placed on the spirit of man. It merges with the universal spirit, for the two are really one." And the second quote, he said, "Whatever is true of the universe as a whole must also be true of the individual as some part of this whole." And you know how I was thinking, how do I use this? And in my personal prayer work, very often when I'm praying, one of the things that I say is, I am not all of God, but God is all of me. And I also say, I am a part of this divine presence, and I can use it. And so I want to read something to you that from an article that I wrote for Science of Mind magazine. And I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs. And it's titled, "You Are a Spiritual Powerhouse." Recently, I read an article describing the greatest regrets that people have on their deathbeds. The single biggest regret was not living a life that was true to themselves. They lived their life to meet other people's expectations. In the book Spiritual Maturity, Joseph Sharp writes of a patient who was dying from AIDS, telling him, "I want you to know, if I could do it all again, I would be more outrageous. You know, give him hell, be more myself." How sad. We can avoid that fate by remembering that we're here for a purpose and that the greatest, most loving power in the universe is waiting to help us live the life that we dream about. So you might ask, where do I begin? The answer is simple, wherever you are. Ernest Holmes tells us when we are unsure of where to start, we should pause and listen. We must trust that the same power that started all things will start us in the right direction. It does not matter what happened in the past. We can move beyond any disappointment, obstacle, setback, or disagreement or discouragement. One last thing. On a recent awards program, George Lucas was being honored. His friend, Steven Spielberg, was telling the audience George's philosophy of life. He said, "George believes, don't listen to your peers, don't listen to your parents, don't listen to your culture, only listen to yourself. That's where you'll find your truth. Our truth lies within, because that's where spirit resides." Each of us has the ability to move within and discover our still small voice, a voice of inner wisdom that will guide us to the right path to follow, no matter where we are in life. You know, we teach that God is without limits, and God is right here working for us, but we must provide the consciousness, because in order to work for us, Spirit must work through us. Joel Goldsmith is one of the wonderful New Thought writers. And he says that any issue in our life is not determined by external conditions, but by consciousness. And he asks the question, so how do we bring God into our consciousness? And he uses what I think is an interesting example. He speaks about the principles of music. And he said, look, if you don't know the principles of music, if you try to play an instrument, it's going to sound really discordant. You're not going to sound very well. But you don't blame the principles of music. What you do is you work at it, you practice until you get better and you get a better sound. And he said, God is right here, right now. But we too need to follow spiritual principles. We need to discipline ourselves in order to manifest our dreams. And when we do this, we have our own experience of God. And I just want to touch on how do we do that? How do we get our own experience of God? How do we develop that consciousness? Well, I'm sure you know all of the answers. We can pray. We can spend time in the silence. I meditate. We don't have to meditate. We can just make room for God by being silent, walking in nature, walking by the ocean, depends where you live, but just make time. We can read. We can obviously go to church. And one thing that I think doesn't get enough attention on what we can do is we can hang with people that are like-minded. We can have a community. That is so important, because if you hang with people that don't believe you, don't believe this, they're going to bring you down. Whereas if you hang with people that are part of your community and believe in the principles, when you're having a difficult time, you have people that can help you move back up. I know my own center closed about 1.5 years ago, and I'll bet a week doesn't go by when my wife, Becky, who you just heard, doesn't say to me, I really miss our community. I really do. Like the late Reverend Dr. Terry Cole, one of her books, she bought a piano. She had no idea how to play the piano. So what she did, she put it wherever she was going to put it in her house. And then I think it was for a week, every day she would spend an hour in prayer that she would learn how to play the piano. After the week, she sits down at the bench with a flourish, starts to play, and it sounds terrible. It stinks, because Terry knows the principles of spirituality, but not the principles of music. And so she had to learn that. She had to get a teacher and learn the principle of music to be able to not sound discordant. And we need to learn the principles of spirituality to have spirit come into our life. The author Alan Cohen tells a story about an eagle that was living with a group of chickens. And one day, a naturalist happened to walk by the farm where this eagle was. And he was amazed. And he said to the farmer, what goes here? What's happening? And the farmer said to him, I found this eagle. Don't know what happened, whether it fell out of the nest or what. I picked it up. I nursed it back to health. And I put it with my chickens. I feed him what I feed the chickens. And he thinks he's a chicken. He can't even fly. And the naturalist says, he's an eagle. So he has the heart of an eagle. He can learn to fly. And so the farmer says, I'm willing to try. So they take the eagle and they take him up high and they try throwing him up. Doesn't work. They try it again and it doesn't work. And while they're trying to figure out what to do, wouldn't you know, an eagle comes soaring by overhead. And our eagle looks up and sees the eagle soaring by. And this time, when the naturalist picks him up, his entire body starts to shake. And he takes off and he flies. The moral of the story is the eagle represents our true self that has unlimited power and unlimited potential. The chicken represents that part of us that operates from fear and limitation. And you know, like that eagle, a lot of us live with a case of mistaken identity. Somebody said we suffer from a case of spiritual amnesia. And it causes us to act in a far less powerful manner than we're meant to live. And you know, the spiritual path, our spiritual path, is not about changing. It's not about changing at all. It's about remembering who we are. That's why the mystic, the 12th and 13th century mystic, Meister Eckhart, said, and I'm just going to paraphrase, he said, spirituality, the spiritual life is not about adding anything. It's about subtracting. And what he meant is we are as spiritual as we are ever going to be right now. So we don't need to add anything. But as we go through our life, sometimes we collect false beliefs. You know, lots of things happen. And that's what we need to subtract to get back to the real and genuine whoever we are, to that true God within. So I want to tell you a fable about somebody named Willow. I want to make the point in a different way. So Willow lived in medieval times, and his life's desire was to be a wizard. So he would practice. I don't know what you do to practice to be a wizard, but whatever it is, that's what Willow did. Because in the village where he lived, the town wizard once a year would hold a contest to see who was going to be his apprentice for that year. And this particular year, Willow was a finalist. And at one point, the wizard held up his hand and he said, which finger has the power? Is it my index finger? And they went, no. Is it my thumb? No. Is it my ring finger? And they all just said no and didn't add anything to it. And the wizard decided none of them were ready. And he didn't choose an apprentice that year. And so Willow went off to live his life. And he became a soldier. And when he became a soldier, he overcame a lot of his deepest fears. And he grew in wisdom and in strength. You might say Willow went from being a boy to being a man. And he went back to his village and he stopped by to speak to the wizard. And the wizard said to him, tell me, Willow, when I asked you the question about where the power lies in which finger, what were you thinking? And Willow said, what I was thinking was the power resides in my own hand. And the wizard said, well, why didn't you say that? And Willow said, I was embarrassed. It seemed like a really arrogant answer. And the wizard said, that was the right answer. And Willow said, I know that now. I realize the power resides within. And the wizard said to him, Willow, if you know that now, then you've become the master. And what it is, when we know that, what we do is we become the master of our own life. So I want to read a quote to you. This is from Anonymous, that great writer, who wrote, deep within man dwell these slumbering powers, powers that would astonish him, forces that would revolutionize his life if aroused and put into action. So what this quote is saying is we are powerful beings and we can overcome, this is how I take it, anything. So later when we have our discussion, I want to touch on this a little more about overcoming difficult situations when we realize what the power is that we have. Barbara DeAngelis wrote a book called Soul Shifts. And she says, what are they? Well, she said they're inner actions. Rather than fixing or revising things on the outside, we take inner actions. We make shifts in consciousness from within. We transform our lives from within. It's a new way of seeing our life and the world. She said, it's like putting on a new pair of glasses and seeing ourselves and the world differently. So let me tell you another story that will bring it home. This couple, newlywed couple, buys a home and they move in. And the first morning they're having breakfast. And the wife says to the husband, well, I see out the window that our neighbor is hanging her clothes up on a clothesline. And the whites look kind of gray. The clothes look dull. She needs to change whatever she's using to wash them. And she needs to get a new detergent. And for the next 3 or 4 mornings in a row, they have breakfast together. And the wife again says, look at those clothes. They're just dull. They're not, she needs a new detergent. About the 5th or 6th morning, the wife comes down and goes, whoa, it's almost like she heard me, like she got a new detergent. Look at those, the whites are white. Everything is just beautiful. She must have gotten a new detergent. And her husband says, no, she didn't do anything. I got up really early today and I washed our windows. Again, making the point. It's what we do. It's what we see. The power is in here. Some of you may know Jean Houston. Jean Houston is a writer and a wonderful facilitator. And Jean Houston wrote about an exercise she likes to do to bring this point home about the real you and me. And so what she does, she gets the group, they move all the chairs away, and she has them all close their eyes and mill around. And when they're going to do that, they're going to bump into one another. And when 2 people bump into one another, one of them says to the other, are you the God in hiding? And the second one responds, are you the God in hiding? And that goes on, except for one person whom Jean has spoken to before the exercise. That person remains silent. And so when someone bumps into them, they remain silent. And from then on, that person has to remain silent. They've remained what Jean called guarded. And so as that keeps happening, you can imagine eventually the entire room is silent. And then Jean says, open your eyes and look around. Look at all the gods that are no longer in hiding. And she said, when that happens, a hush comes over the group. And then they start to laugh and hug one another. And she said what it is, they see the truth about one another because this game draws out what's found in every spiritual teaching. And that teaching is we all contain a God seed, a divine essence that can be nurtured through spiritual practice. We all have a God seed that can be nurtured through spiritual practice. You know, many people don't realize that they're living a limited life. That's because they've lived it for so long. It feels that's the way life is. They get to believe that they're limited, when in truth, the only limitations that we have are the ones that we put on ourselves. And children have unlimited dreams. And yet somewhere along the way, those unlimited dreams seem to die. Let me tell you about two experiments I read that are very similar. A group of psychologists went into an elementary school and they said to the second graders, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the answers like, come, whatever the kid said, policeman, fireman, doctor, nurse, astronaut, whatever they said, they just come. Every class in the elementary school that they went to, that's what happened. Then they went to a high school and asked the same question and got basically nothing back in return because they don't want to look silly. Then I read Carl Sagan. He did something similar. He went into elementary schools and talked to the kids about science and then said, what questions do you have? And these kids had all kinds of questions. They didn't stop to say, oh, I'm going to look silly. This question will be silly, blah, blah, blah. They just went at it. He went into high schools, did the same thing, and got the same response that the psychologists got. Next to nothing. Passion doesn't just die. It dies from lack of use. And it always, when I think about these, it always makes me wonder, what are we doing to our children? What are we teaching them or not teaching them that makes this happen, makes them not feel they can be who they really are? Rabbi Dov Heller wrote that for all eternity, each one of us is unique. We're the only one of us that's ever going to be. And he said, imitation is death. Uniqueness is life. And he said, we must listen to our own voice, because when we follow the voice of another, we become a cheap copy. Think about that. This is a rabbi. Those are really strong words, saying when you listen to the voice of another, you become a cheap copy. He wrote, there are voices all around us telling us who we should be, but somewhere amidst those voices is our own. Unquote. You know, when we listen to our voice, we take ownership of our life. Our voice, each of our voices, knows what's right for us. And when we listen to our voice, that's what frees us. So I want to close with, I couldn't decide which to use, so I'm going to do both. They're both from the book, I Will Not Die an Unlived Life by Donna Markova. And the first one, she says, I believe that our existence in this world, I do not believe that our existence in this world is a random accident. Maybe it is, but I don't believe it. I believe there is more to life than living each day as it comes. The great cellist Pablo Casals agreed. He said that through the whole of recorded history, there has never been another such as you. Each of us is a miracle of uniqueness. Each of us, therefore, is responsible for the discovery of our sustaining passions and rhythms, the cultivation of the green fields in which we can discover what keeps us connected to the full fertility of our soul and all it has to give the world. And the second thing I'm going to read to you, she calls it Living Wide Open, Landscapes of the Mind. And she wrote, I wrote this poem the night my father died with a shrug. His heart was hollow and vacant of dreams. He was convinced he didn't matter. And here it is. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of failing or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that each of what comes to me as a seed goes to the next as a blossom, and that which comes to me as a blossom goes on as fruit. Thank you for being this opportunity, for giving me this opportunity. God bless you. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the other side in a couple of minutes.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Ron. What an awesome talk, opening us up to possibility of who we are. And that's what we bring you each and every week. The different speakers, different perspectives, and growing and expanding who we are in God, which is what Centers for Spiritual Living is all about. Now is our time for giving. So if you enjoy this talk and enjoy the other ones we have, we appreciate all of your donations. And you can donate at cslmidtown.org/donate or scan the QR code that's on the screen. If you will, say with me our affirmation of prosperity. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow. And all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. Thank you, Judy, for being the moderator, and Becky for being a practitioner today, and Reverend Fox for that wonderful talk. Next week, we are online again, and we've got Reverend James Peake coming back, and he's going to talk on choosing or consciously choosing possibility. And every week, we've got the discussion group, which is going over the Science of Mind textbook. And you can join that at 10 a.m. on Zoom. The link is on the website, cslmidtown.org. If you scroll down, you'll see the Zoom link. You can click that, join us, and just a lively discussion. So those are the opportunities we've got. And I will say, upcoming, we are going to have our annual meeting the first Sunday in March. So that's coming up, but just giving you some notice so that if you want to know how we're doing, what we've been doing, and where we're looking to go, join us in person, and we'll do that hybrid too on that first Sunday in March where we are in person. Our affirmation of life. I leave this place now knowing something better than I knew before. I go forth into the world with a heart full of love and a mind full of good sense. I look at the world in a greater way, knowing that I have within me everything I need to create the life I desire. I give thanks for this understanding, and I am grateful for the spirit of life that lives through me. And so it is. And join us over on Zoom to have a discussion with Reverend Fox and see what points we can bring out and discuss. Have a great week, everybody.